Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from Walrus Carp, and tonight we are going to go back in time to a place that both Kate and I are horribly distraught that we never physically got to experience. I feel like there's moments in time where everyone has things that you either got to experience or your parents did, and you just desperately wish you could somewhere in Disney World or Disneyland. But tonight we're talking about the Osborne lights. Nostalgic for a lot of people, especially around the holidays. And with me, as ever, to dive into this sad awakening to the fact that this doesn't exist anymore, and please bring it back, is the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how we doing this evening?
I'm doing good. This research made me cry. I will say that. And it was very sad, but good. It was like both good and sad.
I feel, you know what? Like a really good story. It has some peaks, some valleys, but at the end you feel closure. However, that still doesn't make me feel good that we don't have them.
No, and there's a little bit of drama in this story too. It's not just like,
yeah, you guys want to hear about a Supreme Court case about lights?
Yeah, a little neighborhood feuding. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Gonna be good. Yeah, get your tea ready. It's gonna be good.
Are you gonna spill it?
Just don't microwave it like Kirk.
I don't know if it's safe or not, so don't listen to me about microwaving teas.
All right.
Yeah, I think to start this off, we need to talk about the one, the only Jennings Osborne, and start there. Do you have anything prior to him, like the creation of the earth? Do we want to start there? How much time you got?
Let's go back to the time of the dinosaurs when they put up their Christmas lights. Their holiday traditions.
The T-Rex could never put the star on the tree. It was very sad.
The Brontosaurus just wrapped it around the.
Well, good. I mean, we have Gertie. Gertie at Echo Lake gets a little Christmas hat. So, all right. So Jennings Osborne. And not to be confused with the Osbornes, either Ozzy or Mulan. Take your Osbornes of pick. No, this is a completely separate one with a completely separate story. So Jennings Osborne, this gentleman was born in 1943, and I'm going to cut a little bit of time short in his backstory and just say that he is notable for making his wealth in the pharmaceutical business, and he creates the Arkansas Research Medical Testing Center in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1968. He basically goes to school to be a business. He gets his BA in business, and he has...
He went to school to be a business. So like...
Yeah. It's a business degree. Whatever. Nobody said I could talk right. So he went to school to get his business degree, and he also had a minor in microbiology. So he worked in a lab, and then he found out that for $20 a day, a doctor would pay him to do over 500 tests. And he goes, I'm only getting paid $20 to do 500 tests. And then he started becoming friends with some of the doctors that he was doing these tests for. And they were like, hey, if you set up your own lab, you can make a lot more money than the $20 that you were making. So that's what he ended up doing, is creating. And this lab is not just any small little potato lab. Like, this is like a big, it actually becomes the #1 FDA human clinical trial testing site. So much so that they would test things like, Viagra was one of them. There was another one. I can't remember another.
There really is a lot of tea in this episode.
Dude, well, all right, hang on, time out. Like, I don't know if you know this, the history of Viagra. Viagra was supposed to be a heart medication for, and it just had a really unique side effect, and people ran with that. They were like, that's better. Forget about
It's so Christmassy.
People's ventricles, and let's worry about it. So yeah.
Okay. You know what I will say, get us back on track here. I will say that his story is really fascinating because he worked really hard. Like, they didn't take a day off ever. Like, they said that the reason they became successful is because they worked every single day and nonstop. They were just like workaholics, and that's how they got so successful. The only days that they took off were 3 days every year around Christmas, which is, I think, pretty relevant to this story.
Why, Kate? Why is it relevant?
Well, we'll see. We'll see as we go in. Are we segueing to that? I didn't want to cut you off if you had more.
No. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So now remember, this is wildly successful. At one point, the net worth of Jennings Osborne and their family and their estate is over $50 million. So these are not poor people. These are people who were able to build up a massive, massive business in the medical field. And then this is going to be important because it unlocks lots of different networking with some pretty important figures in America, but also how they're able to fund their big passion project or projects.
Yeah. So they lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, which you've mentioned. And the story of the Osborne Lights, if we're ready to go there, really starts in 1986 so he had a daughter named Allison, who they nicknamed Breezy because she came into our world in a hurry. That's what her mom, Mitzi, said.
Well, you know what? She's a miracle because up until that point, they had suffered 5 miscarriages. So she really was kind of like an angel and this great gift. And that's important to this story.
Yeah. So his daughter requested that they decorate their house. They're like, like, Daddy, can you put the lights on the house? Can you make it big? Like those kinds of, and like, of course, like any good dad, like they're going to go out and do the best they can, right? Well, he had a lot of money to do a lot of things. Their house, I will just mention that their house was 2,200 square feet. It had 6 suites, 13 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, a swimming pool, a hot tub, and tennis courts.
So hang on, I just have to correct you. You said 2,200. It's 22,000.
22,000.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, no. Big difference because it's
2,200 is not that big.
Like it was a giant mansion, and all the rooms were 1 foot by 4 foot.
Very small. It was made for tiny little fairies. I don't know. Yeah. So. Yeah, they had a really big thing to start with, a really big area to start with to put lights on. And so he started putting lights on things, and not just like a few lights. He basically said that he said, I put lights on our tire swing, on the grill, anything that didn't move. He put lights on. So do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I mean, he started out with, there was only, the first year, I think it was like 1,000 lights. And then year after year after year, it just kept growing and growing and growing into this massive. And to picture what their house actually looked like, it looks like the White House with extensions along the sides and wings that expand out. It was massive. It was also gated too. So this thing, actually, leave that up right now. So okay. This is when... So that's the full entirety of this 22,000 square foot mansion. The very center roof is like a 75-foot Christmas tree that they put right on top of their thing. And honestly, you can see how massive this display would get, to the point where it became such an annual tradition for families to come and drive by that all of the neighbors would get backed up with cars. So much so that it would take like sometimes over 2 hours for people just to go to and from the grocery store that lived next to them. Even to the point where it got so ridiculous that Jennings had hired 4 security off-duty officers to help direct traffic to allow his neighbors to leave so they would stop getting so upset. And this thing just keeps expanding. Like, it reminds me of that film with Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito, where they just keep adding lights against each other, and it just gets like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's very much like that, to the tune that Jennings buys the 2 properties next to him, the 2 homes next to him, just to make more lights as years go on. Deck the halls.
They were 5,000 square foot properties. Like, they were not small homes. They weren't as big as his home, but they were not small properties. No. And I also love that you could see the lights could be seen by a plane 80 miles away.
80 miles away.
Which was just crazy. I have notes that say by 1993 there were 3.2 million lights, including an illuminated globe with Little Rock and Bethlehem marked, a carousel, that 70-foot tree that was on top, which had 80,000 lights in 3 colored layers mounted atop of the kitchen. It was actually on top of their house's kitchen. They also had dancing angels, a canopy of 30,000 red lights over a section of the driveway. And then they decorated, of course, the cars, mailboxes, bikes, literally anything that didn't move.
Yeah, and
cars didn't move, but they figured it out.
This guy had 31 cars or something. So it's, again,
it was like extra cars, his bonus
it was
cars.
Cars on cars on cars. I watched an interview with him, and he had like all these rings, like just like massive. It looked like Super Bowl rings on each one of his like pinkies and ring fingers, giant Rolex. And he's like, you know, I'm a humble guy. Like,
I'm a humble guy.
But he was very philanthropic too. They would do massive cookouts for free. He also gave to a lot of political organizations, lots of charities. He got really in tune with local, like the governor. I think at one point, Mike Huckabee and him were like besties because he was spending something like $70,000 a year buying things like wardrobe. One year he spent $20,000 on Mike Huckabee's wardrobe. He probably should have spent less and probably done better. Just saying.
Oh my goodness. Well, someone's asking me what year they started decorating. So this was 1986 was the first year when they had 1,000 lights, and then it just grew and grew. And then 1993, they had this massive display. And of course, like Kirk said, like the neighbors aren't happy. It's the traffic congestion. They blew out a transformer one year, which took out the whole lights in all of the neighborhood.
So much so that
the
following year, they dedicated a transformer just to him. Yeah, it was getting to the point where every year they were spending somewhere around $50,000 plus on the electricity bill just for the Osborne lights. And they kept on, again, as Kate was talking about, people started to complain as it grew longer and longer because it would be lit for 35 days and it would be from sunset to midnight. And so these neighbors filed a lawsuit against him because it would take forever. And they worried that what if we needed emergency vehicles, or I just want to go to the store and it takes me 2 hours due to the congestion. So they ended up getting the county court files an injunction and shortens the time period from 35 days to 15 days. And then he can only do it instead of from sunset to midnight. It's now 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., which Jennings was not happy with that. So they filed an appeal with the Arkansas Supreme Court. And how did that go?
Well, he claimed that his religious freedom was being violated. That's how he, because they're Christmas lights and that's, a faith-based holiday for him. And so Justice Clarence Thomas denied the appeal. And I feel like this kind of like made them mad a little bit that he kept like being so insistent on it. Because by 1995, the Arkansas Supreme Court just shut the lights down entirely and they're done.
Yeah, well, he even when they had that injunction and they were appealing, they were still putting the lights on from sunset to midnight. So even though they were like supposedly from 7 to 10:30, they just ignored it and paid fines. They were like, whatever. Yeah. It was like $10,000 in fines, like for 1 month, and they were like, nah, whatever.
Right.
I mean, if you're at that level of wealth, like what's $10,000? $50 million net worth.
Yeah, I just want to pause here and say, I understand as a neighbor how frustrating that must have been for them to like not be able to get in and out of their homes and feel like it's like this giant spectacle that's probably blinding you and you're like, you can't, it's got to be tough to be a neighbor. However, the fact that this guy spent all of this money and he didn't charge anybody to come see it, it was just free that people could come and see the lights. And I mean, what an amazing gift to your city that's just generous. He spent thousands upon thousands of dollars every year doing this display kind of just out of the kindness of his heart.
Yeah, and honestly, they got recognized so much so that they ended up creating light displays for other areas and other towns in Arkansas. So they would build like light displays for cities and townships. And a lot of that was donated time and effort with his engineering team. And I remember in one interview, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I would love nothing more than for families to be able to be happy and talk about something that they thought was a complete, amazing spectacle for the next few days. Like he genuinely seems like a guy who was not coming from a place of like, I do what I want, I have all this money. I don't think it's that at all. I feel there's no malice, there's no malintent. I feel this person just wanted to make others happy. He saw how many millions of people that he could potentially impact over multiple years, but couldn't get there because of the way that the court system.
Yeah. I mean, he could have charged all kinds of money to have people come see this thing, but I don't have any records of him charging for it. Do you?
No, he did not charge ever. And again, this is like an exorbitant cost to him every year to operate, maintain. At one point, he had a full-time like lighting engineer that worked there. You know,
That's so crazy.
And they had lots of staff, but I mean, this dude worked there all year planning the next year, which is insane.
The Arkansas Supreme Court shut down the lights, but Jennings was like not done putting up lights. I think he felt there's a little spite there. He definitely put up some lights after the September 11th attacks. He made another light display that said it was an American flag that spelled out God Bless America and George W. Bush, and had that on display, which stayed up until 2008 despite some vandalism of it here and there. And like you said, he also designed lights for City of Little Rock and also Elvis's mansion Graceland. So he did all kinds of things, and but he did then pass away in 2011. We'll get to like the connection to Disney here in a second, but I will say there's a quote by Bill Clinton about Osborne. He said, Jennings had a big heart and gave so much to so many people throughout his extraordinary life, from personally providing holiday cheer through his light shows to helping families get back on their feet after natural disasters. Jennings' capacity to give was truly awe-inspiring, which I just think is wonderful.
I don't know why, and I couldn't figure this out, but it'd be interesting if you knew the reason. But how did he get so? I think through his wealth and probably through political campaign donations, he knew almost every standing president.
Yeah,
all of them. Like he went to lunch, dinner. At one point in an interview, he said that he was sending Johnson's wife, Lady Bird, 12 roses every Wednesday, 52 weeks a year, forever. I'm like,
it's like a red flag. Like
he had
sending somebody else's wife's flowers.
He had like all of these like just letters and memorabilia from. He had so many signed pictures of him with presidents too. There's something. It was interesting.
He was an interesting character. I really think a lot of it had to do with he worked really, really hard. He kind of lived that American dream where he like he pulled himself up by his bootstraps and he worked really, really hard to build up this thing. And then he like had this amazing business and did really well and then got connected. I'm sure he did lots of networking in those circles with charities and whatnot. Oh my gosh. And Kirk's showing a picture of him drinking lights.
I like they have him in like whoever staged this. I mean, he probably wanted it staged like this. This is the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, showing him standing right next to a toy soldier in a navy blue with a red power tie, draped with red lights against his 70-foot Christmas tree in the background. He looks like some sort of like Bond villain, which he is not, but he certainly looks like it.
He looks like he could be in the mafia. Like that's kind of the look he's
connected
got.
Guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying that's the look he had. He's giving. So, so shall we go to how this all got connected to Disney? Is that where we're going next?
Yeah. Let's. How did one guy's obsession trying to appease his daughter and his neighbors and friends show up at, of all places, Walt Disney World?
Yeah. So all the drama that was involved with these lights, this ended up on national television. This neighborhood guy irritates all his neighbors and has all these lights that blow out transformers and cause people not be able to. Can you imagine like the interviews and all the things? Like this is everybody knows this is going on. And so Walt Disney World project director John Phelan contacted Osborne's attorney first, and then the attorney contacted Osborne and suggested moving the lights to Walt Disney World. So as it turns out, that Osborne was a huge fan of Walt Disney World, and
he even knew Mickey. He did contributions for Mickey's wardrobe this year, $20,000 just to buy that hat. It's not true. But.
So he agreed to take his light show to Disney's MGM Studios, which is now, of course, Hollywood Studios.
This is an awesome mix-up too that happens right now at this period, because right now they're talking about a location. So John and Jennings are talking, well, where are these going? And basically John says, well, they're going on Residential Street. On Residential Street. What Jennings heard is they're going on a residential street in Orlando. So he was like, oh, that's cool that Disney's going to put it on a residential street. And then he later finds out that Residential Street is not just somebody's neighborhood. Nay, it's in, of all places, Hollywood Studios. So where that backlot tour is located, which Kate has up here, that purple section, there's a little like crescent at the top that at sometimes it was either a tram or a walking tour would take you past these residential homes. So Residential Street was where they filmed films like Splash. And so, yeah, like literally Residential Street was going to be in a theme park. That made a world of a difference to Jennings. And again, there was no cost associated with this. It wasn't like Jennings sold all the lights to Walt Disney World. In fact, all the lights got donated, packed up into 4 giant tractor trailers and driven from Little Rock, Arkansas, all the way over to Walt Disney World to get the install done. But again, just because of his philanthropic nature, the fact that these lights would have a home somewhere, and the bigger point, and I think this is a lot of people's thought process, especially when you get older in life. You know, he was in his late 50s, early 60s at this point. The fact that millions of people potentially could see his creation and his lights. And in fact, during the first install years, he sent his own team to help Walt Disney World and their employees to be able to do the install, because he had hired engineers. There's lots of moving pieces to this. And I think since we have so much more content and footage of when they're installed as the Osborne lights, we can talk about some of the individual elements, which is really, it's awe-inspiring and really beautiful.
Sure. And I will want to give a little bit of context, because some people might not be familiar with MGM Studios, how it used to be, because it's pretty different than how it is now in Hollywood Studios. And we won't get into this too much because we could go down a rabbit hole for a long time. But that area that was Residential Street, like Kirk said, was at one point, originally it was part of the tram tour, and then they made it part of the walking tour, or vice versa. I can't remember. But the backlot tour was 2 hours long. It was a long adventure. And that's, I think,
and I thought Pirates at Disneyland was long.
Oh, come on. What are you, Lem? So there was also New York Street, as well as that kind of that area that's down lower on this map that Kirk is pointing out there. That is like the New York area. And so it was kind of like a New York set, right? So you would walk down it and it would look like a street in New York, except a lot cleaner and less people. So, and no cars, obviously.
Yeah. So for context, for those folks that are listening, but also visual folks, this would be kind of where Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge / Batuu are. And also for those that remember the Lights, Camera, Action Arena, which was over here. So Toy Story Land would be up in the northern section, and then your Galaxy's Edge would be in that more western section as it occupied. So this red line here, for those that are watching, that went along the tram path.
Yeah, and the if you remember, Michael Eisner really wanted this to be an active studio where they were always filming things. And they did film a few things here. If anybody's familiar with the Golden Girls, they had their house there, but they would only film the outside of the house on Residential Street, just the outside shots of the house. And then they would go inside the house, and those inside shots were shot in Burbank. So I want to say Ernest Saves Christmas was also filmed there.
Yeah.
They have that house on that street and a couple of others. So it made sense to like move the lights to another street that looks like a regular street, right? Eventually, though, they changed it because they added that lights, motor, action, attraction in 2003, and that's when that whole area was renovated. So the lights then returned to Streets of America, and they ended up on New York Street, which is what you'll see most of the pictures of, because it really wasn't on Residential Street very long. It was only from 1997 to 2003, 2000, and then 2004 it started in a new spot. So
I'm not gonna lie, I think the Residential Street would have been really fun because it would have been more quaint and homey, where when it gets relocated to New York, it's more grandiose because of just the size and stature of the buildings. Like, we're talking about single and only a handful of 2-story family homes in Residential Street, where when you go to New York, you're talking about multiple stories, and it's definitely has a scale to it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more spread out when it was on Residential Street from everything that I've seen. It's definitely kind of like walking down a street with all the houses just extravagantly decorated.
Yeah, it's you're basically dealing with 8 or 9 Clark W. Griswold homes. It's because they are fully decked out in lights.
Yeah, and so they're that. It was originally just a place where the tram would go only in Residential Street. And then during this time of year, though, they did allow people to walk through it. So that was novel in itself, that you got to walk through a place you usually could only ride through on the tram.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome that they, at 6 o'clock, they'd stop the trams and you could walk down in a tram. Like, could you imagine if somebody was like, oh, yeah, you can just walk down where, that happened, I think, just a very brief aside. In Halloween Horror Nights, there was a moment where the Kong-frontation, which Kong, if you don't know what that attraction was like, it was a suspended tram car that would go over an entire story and a half worth of space below. So one of the houses was actually on the bottom floor. So you got to walk through, who cares about the house? How cool is that to walk through one of your attractions that you would never be able to set foot on that bottom floor? I think that's really neat.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I will say, so when the first showing of the lights happened, it was winter of 1995, and it was called the Osborne Family Festival of Lights. Didn't get a different name till later, which we'll get into in a bit. But I have a quote from John Phelan, who is the person at Disney who is responsible for getting the show there. And he said, "I always tell the story of the very first time when we turned on the lights. I was walking down the street, and of course it was filled with guests. I'm behind this family. It's a mother walking next to her 10 or 11-year-old son, and she gets under the big red canopy, which you'll see on the street. And of course, the Christmas music is playing and all that sort of stuff. And she suddenly stops in her tracks, and she just looks down at her son. And it was just the way that she looked at him, and the way then she said, 'Merry Christmas,' was just the sound in her voice." She says, "And to me it was, I know this may seem really simple, but to me it was just the sound of her voice. It was the look she gave him. I knew it was the very first Merry Christmas that she said that year. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and something clicked inside of me and said, that's what these lights are all about. It kind of creates a feeling in you that sort of spills out into the Christmas spirit," which I thought was just a really beautiful way of putting that.
I can imagine that Floridian mom. "Merry Christmas, Tommy. It's been a good year." That's just not like that. I always think of, for some reason, I think about the Always Sunny episode where is Charlie's mom, who's she's a chain smoker, and she is celebrating Christmas, and instead of grunting, I think she gave a more of a and he was, or no, it's not Charlie's, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
Oh gosh. But anyway, I just thought that was a really lovely moment. And that's the feeling I got from watching a lot of this too, which we'll show you some more pictures of it as we talk about the elements.
Again, I think that's what led me to wanting to even look at the research. And then you and I think independently fell in love, even though we don't have a nostalgia for it, we fell in love with the idea of what this represented and how it made families and guests of the parks really feel during this holiday time period. And it also makes a lot of sense because during my live streams, people clamor for the Osborne family lights, and I understand and I agree with them. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's, you know, I don't know if you feel this way, but I always feel like there's a certain point in the Christmas season where I'm just like, oh, it's Christmas, you know, and it's like, it's something, it's always just a moment that happens. I'm like, oh, it's Christmas. And it kind of like brings you back to all those like sweet memories you have of your family or things that really mattered to you in the past. And I love that this was that for a lot of people. Why are you laughing at me?
Because I have a problem. I have like a demon in my head that like when you say these really lovely things, all I think of is like a scene from Jingle All the Way where like somebody's punching somebody for a Turbo Man and they're like falling over.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know, because it makes me laugh. Like you're like it's a beautiful time for families to come together, and there's a moment where you really feel it. And all I can think of is like, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Like somebody getting uppercut. I told you I have a problem, and you're painting this beautiful picture, and I'm getting scalded by hot chocolate. I don't know why. But no, I think all of us as families and growing up, we all have those moments. I'm trying to think of like, I've had some really good ones with the kids. The visiting, we had them dressed up in these really, really pretty like cranberry colored dresses that were really fancy. It was the first year that we moved down here, and we got pictures done, or not done. I took pictures in front of the gingerbread house in the Grand Floridian, and I just was like, this is a really special moment that, I don't know, it's just cool. So
yeah. I had it last year. For me, it was because I got to go to Disneyland, I think in November-ish or early December, the snow falling on Main Street right after the fireworks, and I just like, I totally burst into tears. Well, I'm like quiet tears because I don't want to be weirdo in public, but like I definitely was like, this is that moment when everything else kind of fades away and you're like, okay, this is just Christmas. It's just peace, you know, and
yeah,
it's important. I do want to say, I have to say before we move on to the next thing that Jeff over on my side said I was getting too serious for Kirk. And then that's when you started like laughing and introducing all of your crazy punching Christmas scenarios. So
it's true. I feel like, again, like I'm like, this is getting too heady. I need to bring it down. And no, honestly, it's funny because like there are those beautiful moments, and I totally agree with you, but it also, like, the way that you paint the picture makes me immediately want to paint the complete reflexive picture because it makes me laugh.
Do you do that when you watch my content too? That's like emotional.
God, do I ever? Oh my God, it's the greatest.
Crazy.
I do it when we're together too. Like anytime like we're walking the parks together and you're like, it's really peaceful. You really need to go on the Columbia or something. And I'll be like, I just like, it's all I picture is me on the Boston Tea Party, just like throwing crates off that thing. I don't know what it is. It's just who I am. You're lucky I keep it in most of the time.
That's you keeping it in.
Yeah.
Woo. Okay.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Well, shall we dig into what this display actually looked like? Maybe I have mostly pictures from on New York Street.
Yeah.
That area.
Mm-hmm.
So what this display looked like after it moved here to New York Street in MGM Studios and then Hollywood Studios later in 2008. They displayed this every year, late November to early January. It took 20,000 hours every year to set up. But there was no extra charge to see any of these lights. It was included with your park ticket, so this wasn't like an extra evening event that you had to pay for or anything like that. There were over 5 million lights, 10 miles of rope lighting, 30 miles of extension cords, 20,000 man-hours to install, which I already said. Sorry, I just realized I put it on here twice. 30 technicians begin working on the project each August. And they also have a crew of 2 that like maintain the lights all year and like make sure, like, you know, get them ready for the next
Literally
year.
all they're doing is going, all right, that bulb's
Checking all the bulbs.
That would be the worst job ever. You have to pay me like $2 million to sit there and do that because Fred is so tedious. Anybody who's ever put lights together knows what I'm talking about.
That just reminds me of National Lampoon's Vacation, where he just like hands his son like the big ball of lights. It's like
It's like a big
you got
old.
that.
Yeah. Can you untangle that for me?
They also drew about 800,000 watts of electricity. So lots and lots of that. Do you want to get into some of the specifics of what it looked like?
Yeah, sure. So they always had a canopy over their driveway when it was in Arkansas, the Osbornes. Here they brought a canopy across the streets of America here in New York, which I thought was really cool. So I'm not going to talk about like any of the new innovations. We're going to just talk about some of the things that are of old. So of course that 70-foot Christmas tree all the way at the end of the street ends up being your pinnacle landmark. There's also 2 other segmented trees. There's also angels that are going to be hanging in the sky. I'll pull up a picture of them in a second. But the other thing that you notice in here, this is a long exposure video, hence why everybody's blurry. But you notice these like carousels, and these carousels had rotating images on them as well, like these like static figures, which I thought was really cool. So, you know, they could dim these, they could brighten them. But yeah, it was just absolutely beautiful looking. I mean, it's the word gaudy comes to mind in the best way possible. Like,
Yeah.
like you never want to do this to your house, but you kind of want to do this to your house. Do you know what I mean?
It looked awful in the daytime. Awful.
Yeah.
Like just terrible. Just wires everywhere. But at night, it was spectacular. And I do have a note. There was 100 angels, and the 2 large carousels were revolving displays. One of them had like angels on them. Another one had different characters on it. The 70-foot tree that used to be on their kitchen. They also had some other things that did have like religious symbols on there, which I thought was really interesting.
Well,
they did
okay. So let's talk about angels, and we can talk about religious iconography. So there's the angels over here. There's all these angels in the sky as well. There's peace on earth. It says Merry Christmas, not Happy Holidays. So there are lots of religious overtones right here. The other thing is the very first year that they put out, they had, I think, 4 or 5 years where they gave people glasses that would change the way that the lights looked. And the first
the
year,
3D glasses.
yeah, they had like these 3D glasses that you could put on. Legoland uses them still for their fireworks, and it makes it look like little Lego bricks. Well, these lights would turn into angels the first year, but there was lots of complaints from guests saying that this was too religious based. So as a result, they changed it the following year to snowflakes, I believe.
This is what those look like.
What
So that's a picture taken through the glasses. Yeah, they didn't. I know that they had them in like 2008, but then by 2014, for sure, they were gone. And it made things look a little bit blurry. Honestly, people didn't love them. But some people would bring their glasses back even after they look like this. They would bring them back later, even after they stopped selling them.
The problem is there's too many lights.
Yeah.
Those work really well when you don't have as much, but there's so much. Oh, that's cool. You got a picture of them. Mm-hmm. Are you going to buy some and drive around and look with your Osborne? Actually, don't do that. It's probably unsafe.
Don't
have
drive.
Somebody else drive. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a nativity scene too that was part of this display as well.
They only had that up for like a year, and then they moved it to Italy. The Italy Pavilion ended up taking it.
Yeah. And then there was also, which I showed briefly, they did have a Star of David and a menorah and a dreidel as well. So they had a little bit of Jewish religious symbols in there as well, which is interesting. I just think it's interesting. You do see a little bit of that in Disneyland as well. There's a menorah they put up there. They've had more of that recently, but I think it's interesting that, you wouldn't have seen a nativity. That's not something that you saw often in the parks like these days, but they did back then. No. So just something interesting to mention.
I also like how there was Santa and reindeer. Just is so cool. I mean, it's, again, I feel like the big thing that you need to take away from this is it started out at 1,000 lights back in '86. It grew to, before it left Little Rock, 3 million lights. And then as Disney took it over, they continued to add to the tune of roughly about 5 million lights at the end of this thing.
Yeah, and they did start adding new things as they went. So I do have a few unique family pieces that I found.
Oh, please, can we talk about it?
Well, one is the family was a huge Razorback fan, which I don't know the sports and I don't know what that is. So, but I do know that they had a giant lit Razorback that they put up every year in honor of the family that you could go find. They also had stockings representing each member of the family that you could see, and they weren't like super obviously labeled to them or anything. And one of them even had a little hidden Mickey on it. But those were put up every year as a tradition just to honor the family. And then, this is probably what you're thinking about, is the cat, the
black cat. Mm-hmm.
And the story behind this is that the Osbornes, when they donated all the lights, they accidentally included a Halloween item that they had. And by the time they realized what had happened, Osborne thought it was so funny that he's like, oh, you should just keep it. So then Disney started putting it up as part in the decorations, and they would move it around every year for people to find. And then even in the last year in 2014, they moved it every day so people could try to find it in a new location, even if it was the next day, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. You know,
Yeah.
It's fun. There's very few things like that move or change or alter. So, like, for example, in Carousel of Progress, the wooden doll always changes positions in the very last Christmas scene. And then I found out the other day, I know you're not going to ever go on this attraction, but there is a hidden mallard on ET, and that moves every single day. So you can go find a wooden duck if you're at Universal.
No, I will not be going to see that, but that's great.
Goodbye, Katie.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that were the unique family pieces. So I do have a little bit of like running through the history here. Back in 1997, they simplified the name to just Osborne Family Spectacle of Lights. And they created a Osborne Family Spectacle of Lights challenge, which was like a scavenger hunt that you could go and spot certain things, which I thought was really fun. I tried to like find actual information about it. All I got was like a very blurry video, but there was a whole board that you could go and find things. Did you find anything about this?
I found some of the things that you can go and search for.
Okay.
One of them was Jack Skellington as an ornament. You can see his like head. And then the other one was for a show that I think a lot of us might remember. I don't know if you can see who that is.
I'm the baby, gotta love me.
Not the mama. So this is Baby Sinclair from Dinosaurs was hidden one year.
Oh, I remember that show.
Mm-hmm.
That brings it back.
Gotta go back to wasn't his job to like just push over trees?
Yeah, I don't.
Yes. It was. I think that's all he did was pushed over trees at work all day.
Oh man, that was such a fun show back in the day. I have a better picture of it. You can see him a little bit better. There he is.
He would just bash his poor dad all the time.
It was a weird show, but it was a good show.
It was a good show. You know what it was? It was like the Family Matters of like dinosaur shows, because there's a lot of dinosaur shows at the time, and I felt like it appealed to different audiences. I was a Family Matters kid. That's what we watched. That was the jam. We weren't Full House people. I'm sorry.
You didn't watch Full House? I just watched TGIF. We just did all of it.
Urkel all day over Kimmy Gibbler. Like the Gib is out, the Urk is in.
But no, I can't. No.
And Step by Step, no, negative.
Step by step.
Day by day. Had good you know what always something that reminded me of like now it reminds me of like Michael Eisner is at the very end of Step by Step they show that Shoreline wooden roller coaster, which I'm pretty sure is like exactly what they tried to pull when they brought California Screamin' in. Was like one of those like beach front roller coaster vibes.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Well, that was a little fun walk down memory lane. So other changes that happened to the lights. Like I said, it wasn't shown in 2003 because of the move from Residential Street because of lights, motor, action, attraction being added in. So then in 2004, it reopened. It was just gone for 1 year because of that. In 2004, it reopened and returned to the streets of America, specifically New York Street. They also added an artificial snow effect to the display, made up of 33 snow machines that used 100 US gallons of fluid per evening to make it snow.
I love that. I wish we had snow machines. Like we barely, thank goodness, and I hope that it still happens at studios because it's the only place you can get snow for free outside of Disney Springs.
I think they should do it like Disneyland does. I hope they do this year because they said they announced that there was going to be a lighting ceremony for the castle in Florida. At least that's what I heard in Magic Kingdom. And that's what they did at Disneyland last year. So I'm hoping they do the little lighting ceremony and then make it snow for like 5 to 10 minutes like they did in Disneyland last year. And I think that is wonderful. So I hope they do that.
If you ain't got no dough, then you ain't got no snow. So buy your Mickey, your very Merry Christmas party tickets because that was the only way last year to see him in the Magic Kingdom.
2005, Sylvania became the presenting sponsor of the Osborne Lights, and as part of a strategic alliance between Disney and the company Siemens. Their lighting division became the sponsor. And then when Siemens divested Sylvania, Siemens remained as a sponsor for the 12-year contract. So they stuck around until the end, I believe. And then 2006 was the other really big change year for Osborne Lights. That's when
this was huge.
They made the lights dance to music. So then they changed the name to the Osborne Family Spectacle of Dancing Lights. So it's funny because they like shortened the name and then they made it longer. Like,
yeah, well,
who's counting?
I feel like that happens quite a bit. I still am bothered by the Lion King show's name, which I refuse to call it by its full name.
Why not, Kirk?
It's too long.
We all just call it the Lion King show anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that's a tradition in Walt Disney World, right? Like they specifically named it Walt Disney World because Roy wanted to honor his brother, and everybody told him like people are just going to shorten it to Disney World like they do Disneyland. And he's like, I don't care. You're going to call it Walt Disney World after my brother.
Well, you're right. I mean, Tiki Room versus Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, which is not even the original name, but still a long name that exists today. So yeah, people shorten things.
People shorten things because they don't got time. So. But the songs, let's get back to the dancing lights because that incorporated that canopy. And I have to tell you, when I watched the video of this, I was blown away by what they could accomplish. And I've seen a lot of light shows and things. It's like I know the technology is there, but they really went above and beyond. And so what would happen is that they would do a song and they'd have 7 minutes of kind of like the lights would kind of stay still, quote unquote. They would not dance. And then they would do another song 7 minutes later. And I won't go through the whole list because it's a long one, but they had the Trans-Siberian Orchestra a couple times. They had Here Comes Santa Claus. They had some more trendy songs. They had What's This from Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm going to not be a completionist and not give you the whole list. Growth, Kirk, growth.
No, please tell us more for a while.
But they were really fun. They kind of oscillated between ones that were like pop songs or traditional songs or a little bit more emotional songs. They had a good blend there.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it catered to all the multi-generations of people who would be visiting this. And and the timing of each one made it so that you could stay there for a half an hour and catch 3-4 songs and feel good.
Yeah, and it's like it's just all these people milling around underneath the lights and like looking up and like it surrounds you. It's a surround sound kind of experience,
And now I know that's like, it's popular even for people at home. I mean, at 2023, lots of people have programmed lighting. But I felt like in 2006, this was still relatively cutting edge using all of those dimmer relays to be able to time things effectively. Now, granted, it gets better as the show goes on all the way through 2015, but it's still, I don't know. I thought it was impressive for 2006 when you're watching it, you're like, dang, this was good then. It would be incredible now, and I get why people want it back.
They would, the technology's increased so much since then. They could have added all kinds of more things to it, and it could have been pretty wonderful. They did in 2011. They replaced all the lights with LEDs, probably to save on cost, and it just makes more sense, with that many lights, which then made them a little bit brighter. And then the cast members started adding even more hidden Mickeys to display. They had over 80 by the time the show ended, and some were more obvious characters and a classic Mickey, and some were more hidden. But that was another part of it, is not only you could find the purple cat, but you could find the hidden Mickeys, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, they had one that was like in a basketball net, and it was it had like
that.
Yeah, that one was cool.
Here, this one is really fun.
Yeah,
there's two of them, so I think they bounced between each other.
Yeah, it looks like it's like shooting into the basket. So
yeah, and they had ones that are like they're on the tin soldiers. They had a Mickey that was on one of them, and there's also just little ones that were hidden all over the place that you could find. I have a picture of the nativity. Ta-da! I didn't know I still had that. Other than that, they added a whole bunch of IP characters to it, which I thought was really interesting. I did find a little Stitch, which was really cute, in a tire swing. This made me happy. And there was also some Star Wars IP. There was this Nightmare Before Christmas was on a wreath. There was 101 Dalmatians, which I thought that one was adorable. Did you see pictures of that one?
No, I didn't.
So not only did they have like the actual Dalmatian dogs out front, which I'll find in a minute, but they had Tony's restaurant lit up, and they had the little spaghetti display.
Oh, that's
cute. The two
cute.
dogs eat. Just made me like Lady and the Tramp. That's obviously not 101 Dalmatians. That's Lady and the Tramp. But then I just have dogs on the brain. But they did have the 101 Dalmatians as well, which I can't seem to find at the moment. And they also had an Olaf and Roger Rabbit and over 40 characters by 2007. So they had lots of them, which was fun.
Yeah, it's awesome
to find.
Yeah, again, I think that's probably what makes Small World better in Disneyland, is for kids to be able to find characters. So they just kept plussing the lights and making them better and better and more. I guess the best way to put it is like Disney-fication of the lights, Yeah, the first couple of years were very much like, these are Osborne's lights, and then they're like, and we're going to add our own stuff into it as well. Mm-hmm. I agree. That's kind of what it was like. They did also have this display, though, that was really fun, this billboard that said, "Making memories you won't soon forget," and then it signed Jennings Osborne, and it kind of looked like their little family backyard with a grill and two chairs, and it just kind of like a nod to the beginnings of it. Yeah, that's great.
And they also had a gigantic light switch that they would have a ceremony, and somebody would do. They would flip the switch, and all the lights would come on.
Yeah, usually they would bring. So again, this wasn't a paid thing for guests, and Disney didn't pay for the original set of 3 million lights that came to them. However, there was some compensation. The family would be invited down every single year to annually flip the switch with a guest, and Disney would put them up in the Grand Floridian for a week. And that was it.
Yeah, I mean, which is such a special thing if we go back to that original story of like they worked all year long, but they took 3 days off at Christmas time, right? So I think it's really special that, they donated these lights to Disney, and Disney puts them up and lets them have that special family time every year in the Grand Floridian, which I think
that's great.
I love it. I also have this one of Mickey and Minnie at a picnic bench, which I think is really cute. So do we want to talk about what happened to them? The sadder part of this
Sure, yeah. Go for it.
So September 11th, 2015, Disney announced the final season of the Osborne lights. This was because they were putting in Galaxy's Edge. At that point, everybody called it Star Wars Land. But that meant they wouldn't have any room for it anymore, because if you remember that map that we looked at, that's pretty much where all of that residential street, well, that was gone by that point, but all of those streets back there, all of that backlot area was being transformed into Galaxy's Edge. So the last showing was on January 6th of 2016. And the final Dancing Lights songs were Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas and Mickey Mouse Club Alma Mater. Now it's time to say goodbye to
That's when you
our
cried.
company.
That's when you cried, right?
Actually, I cried watching the show, like the
Okay.
actual Dancing Lights. I was like, this is so beautiful, and so much creativity went into that. Like thinking about all the artists that designed that lighting display and those shows. I was like, this is amazing. So
Yeah, it's beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I always cry at that alma mater song, but
Well, I think that the way that they closed that out was beautiful and very Disney and appropriate. And when you watch that on YouTube, people are like screaming at the end, like because they're just like, oh God, it's gone. Like it's an auto. It was slammed. People were there. They actually extended the final. It was supposed to be January 3rd, 2016. That would close it, and they actually extended it 3 more days.
because people were
just-
really upset. This
Yeah,
was like, this is the way they kicked off their holiday season.
Yep.
This was what they did. This was their family tradition because it
Mhm.
had been going on quite a long time by that point. And understandably, people were very, very sad. And I'm a little sad too,
Now,
not gonna lie.
one thing I do want to mention is that this went all the way through 2015. However, Jennings passes on July 27th, 2011 from heart surgery complications. He was hospitalized for over 100 days and ended up passing due to, he actually there was a day where he was cutting his lawn and he got heat stroke, but it also turned out that he had a heart attack that he didn't know about. So they did one heart surgery, and then afterwards they had to do another surgery, and basically there was like a shock to his organs, and eventually he passes from this at age 67. Now, what I think is kind of a beautiful legacy is starting that 2011 series, that season, they made one of the angels bright and white, and they put it up higher than all the other ones as an homage to Jennings, which I know Breezy and Mitzi were there that year, and they did lots of interviews. You can actually see them online, and they talk about that. Actually, the interview that I saw, the interviewer had like no heart about it. He was like, "So your dad's dead. How do you feel about that?" And it was awful. It was really bad, and you felt like she was uncomfortable too. But the legacy was there, and they loved what Disney did in a respectful way for it. But the interviewer was a little tough.
Yeah, that's awful. Well, from all the things that I've watched of kind of their pre-shows and whatnot that they would have to lighting the lights at night, they really leaned into the idea of a random act of kindness or doing kindness for others, and like having that be kind of the legacy there, because of what Jennings did for everybody else was a kindness to the world and to the people that he didn't ask for anything for. So, I love that idea of that legacy, that, that's what we can take from this is, go and do something for others and not expect anything back and just be generous, just like he was. Now, what are you going to say that's like crazy? What were you thinking in your head while I said all that?
Nothing.
Oh, good.
I do have to say what's interesting, right, is like this family goes through a lot throughout this period, right? It doesn't end there though. So after Jennings passes, the family's trying to sell off their research facility that was really profitable, but sadly that goes south, and they open up a new operation called the Osborne Research Center, which basically puts them in massive debt to the tune of $3.5 million. So that $50 million gets downgraded to the point where they're in debt that much that they have to file bankruptcy and basically sell off almost everything to be able to secure that debt, which I think is crazy. It's just like an interesting, this like rags to riches Horatio Alger story of Jennings and their family, and then this awesome philanthropic, and then he passes, and then like I don't know what the family's doing right now. Like I would love to find out how they celebrate legacy. Now, I'm going to leave you with something that's a little bit positive for those that are like myself who have never, ever seen these, and you want to see something that's similar. Well, They haven't sold these lights to anybody, and we don't know where they're located. They may have been donated to various churches and other things.
No, we know where they went.
Maybe. Well, fully?
Most of them.
Okay, go ahead.
Most of the lights were donated to Give Kids the World Village, which is a nonprofit resort in, I'm going to say this wrong, Kissimmee?
Yeah, Kissimmee, yeah.
Okay, Florida, for children with critical illnesses and their families. So every year as of 2022, I haven't seen one announced for this year yet, they have a Night of a Million Lights event where it is used to raise money for the organization. And many of the Osborne lights have been incorporated into that event. So as far as I know, that's
so all right, ready? Let me explain a little bit. So they did that for like a handful of years, and then they stopped. And then a private company started running them at this place called H2O. It still is philanthropic and attached with Give Kids the World. This year, they're doing like a 1-day benefit. Because that, if you don't know Give Kids the World, it's this amazing organization that kind of stemmed out of a need to have a facility that had everything for kids on site. Not like a Make-A-Wish, because like a Make-A-Wish is just like a one event or time or place or a trip. This is an all-encompassing resort that allows kids to visit with their families and not worry about any of the costs and be able to travel to the parks. It's really beautiful. But yeah, they haven't utilized those lights though at their location for years, and I don't still think they're going to do that. But there is a setup that looks almost identical to the way that they used to do it over at Walt Disney World. It's different because it's a different location, but it's at Silver Dollar City. They even have the carousels. They have the angels. Now, when you ask the officials from there, hey, are these the Osborne lights? They'll go, well, we took a lot of inspiration from other places. It's the Osborne lights, and you can go see them there. Luckily, it's not physically them, but it has all the feelings and emotions tied to it. I'm curious because Dollywood is tied in the same. I wonder if they have a similar light setup. I didn't do research on that, so interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Well, sounds like there's a couple places you can kind of see something that's similar to it, even though it's not the same as being in the parks.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do love the Give Kids the World thing. And, you know, I used to volunteer for a similar organization that was not quite for Disney, but it was Ronald McDonald House, which helps families that need to be near a hospital, like a major hospital, but they live far away from that particular hospital, and it gives them a place to stay.
That's great.
So I love those kinds of organizations that really help out families that are fighting. Their kids are going through something rough. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, Give Kids the World is deeply tied to lots of Orlando and particularly theme park, amusement park, and entertainment. So lots and lots of folks do tons of charity hours to help donate them too. So
this has been a really fun discussion about Osborne lights. It's been neat to kind of dig into something that, you know, a lot of people remember, but not everybody knows about because it's kind of getting, you know, it's older now. Like it's disappearing, so to speak, from everybody's.
Yeah, I didn't like this episode at all because we don't have them and I didn't see them, and I just feel like I'm always going to be longing. But it looks like at Branson, Missouri, I can kind of relive a little bit of that or go to Give Kids the World.
Yeah. At least there's a little bit of that. And I think, you know, there's things that we can take forward from this, that idea of doing it, you know, random acts of kindness for people and being generous and choosing to step into that mindset of, you know, peace on earth and the spirit of Christmas, like looking for that spirit of Christmas, which was kind of what he was trying to give to everybody. I think that is really special. And I think that's something that we can still have, even though the Osborne lights are gone.
One of the fun things that you can do that is completely free, that has that vibe, and I'm not a big fan of this place, but it's lovely during the holidays, is Disney Springs. Go grab yourself some hot cocoa and walk around Disney Springs. It snows, like they do the Snope there. But when the Christmas trees, which are all themed, they do like a little scavenger hunt for kids, and you'll get like a commemorative button or some sort of keepsake from that. And the trees are just lovely, and the music is great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. And, they also have other things too in Disney, like the gingerbread houses and those kinds of stuff. So there's lots of fun stuff.
Fun fact, gingerbread houses. I'm serious about this.
Okay.
Go to the beach club. You can see
Yeah.
that you can go to the Grand Flow and look at the gingerbread house and take pictures. It's lovely. Do not wait in that crazy line for gingerbread. One, it's dry. It's like a rock. You don't need it in your life. Two, you can go to the Contemporary and get better gingerbread. Plus, they have a gingerbread castle there. But my personal favorite one is if you're at Epcot, just walk right out the International Gateway. It's about a 5-minute walk right into the Beach Club lobby. They have a gingerbread carousel, and it is beautiful. It moves. It's really fun. And they also have themed cocktails, themed cocos, and then also your gingerbread shingles and all those kinds of treats there with 0 line. Trust me, you will wait an hour to an hour and a half come December at the Grand Flow, and it ain't it.
Well, I like in Disneyland how they have different trees like in every land, and like the Adventureland tree is one of my favorites because it's kind of like they just hung random stuff on it to make it look like ornaments because
I love that.
out there in the outpost. And then the best gingerbread I've ever had was at Jolly Holiday Bakery when they have the little gingerbread Mickeys. They're like super soft.
They're insanely good.
delicious. Yeah, very good.
Okay. I was telling Lem because he was over there in Disneyland. Like that is the one thing. Well, Alice in Wonderland and Jolly Holiday. Like if I could take and Radiator Springs or all of Cars Land. If I could take 3 things, if I could take those 3 things and put them in Walt Disney World, we don't have good gingerbread at all. Like in that those cookies, they're insane. They're so good over there.
They're really good. Like the first time I tried it, I was like, oh, this is a thing now.
Yeah, it's not even
oh
like
my gosh.
there's no other cookie that's like it on Earth.
No, and some people are mentioning the Disneyland candy canes as well. I've actually never gotten one because there's a whole
They're
process
really
you have to
challenging.
go through
Yeah,
to
there's
get
like
one.
virtual queues and waiting
Yeah.
and times and lotteries.
You got to be there on the
all that stuff to
right
get them.
day at the right time. Get in the
Very
queue.
specific.
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But it's
I haven't
cool. I
tried
think
one yet.
I do think stuff that has a very big wonky process or annoying hoops always makes the things a little better. I know that's silly, but like that's why you have hazing weeks. That's why you have virtual queues, like because a little bit of that FOMO makes it taste a little bit better.
Well, and you get so excited when you get your like low boarding group. You feel like you've won, like the lottery, right?
Won the lottery.
like
Yeah.
woohoo!
That's true. That is one thing. I'm actually a little bit disappointed this year with Magic Kingdom because almost all but 2 of their seasonal Christmas offerings are party exclusive. They usually, like in years past, it's always been like at least like 5 to 10 items that you could get during like normal. Everything's party exclusive. I'm like, kind of stinks. Luckily, there's plenty to explore. And as it comes to Christmas trees, I'm going to do a Christmas tree challenge this year, and I'm going to go to every single resort and every single theme park and see all of their lobby or their icon trees. I'm not going to see every single Christmas tree because like every ride has a Christmas tree. It's like, you'd never be able to do it. But do you know today is the debut of the Jingle Cruise too?
Is
it?
it?
It just started today.
I'm so excited. I've never been. So
it's a good one.
This is my year.
It
Can't
is a good
wait.
one. Yeah.
I'm going to go on it like a million times like you did with what is it called? The Nightmare Before Christmas, Haunted Mansion Holidays.
Haunted Mansion Holidays is amazing. Jingle Cruise, you'll get on twice if you're using Genie Plus because you can rope drop it and then catch it later on. But that's it.
There are multiple days, so let's make it happen.
It is really good, and the Christmas jokes are fantastic.
I can't wait.
You're gonna love it.
So
It's
excited.
really it's that and Living with the Land are our best 2 overlay things that we have here. You used to get one for Tomorrowland Speedway, but they stopped doing that years ago.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, I'm excited. So our next episode is all going to be about the overlay on Small World, which Disneyland, they do a Christmas overlay. So we're going to talk about that one a little bit. And then we will dig into the history of the Jingle Cruise and some of the fun things about that as well for our December series, which is really fun. So
I am excited because Jingle Cruise is fantastic. I've recorded every single time, and every year it's slightly different, and every skipper has very different jokes. And some of the jokes are like Home Alone related. If you get it, it depends. It's really good.
I'm there for that. Yes.
Yeah, you'll like
exciting.
it. Mm-hmm.
Well, shall we wrap it up?
Like a good present, wrap it up.
like that Christmas themed. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We really loved going and experiencing the Osborne lights, even though we are heartbroken that it doesn't exist anymore. But just remember to keep that Christmas spirit with you as you head into the holiday season. As you head into the holiday season. Kirk, do you have anything else for us tonight before we wrap up?
You can always go to Branson, Missouri if your heart needs mending.
Well said. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time for Distory.
See you guys.